Well, hello and welcome to this video. I want to start with a question. Are you stressed out from anticipating all of the needs of all of the people all of the time? Really think about it. Do you go out of your way to make sure that a particularly difficult person, let's say in your family, has all the things that they need so that when you guys get together, there's not some kind of a problem? If you're not in your head, then this episode is for you, because in this episode, I'm going to break down what I've coined codependent anticipation and give you some steps that you can take to stick to your side of the street a little bit more and stress a little bit less. Sound good? Okay. So before we get started, if you are new to my channel and you may not know me, first of all, make sure you subscribe. Secondly, hit the bell so that every time something new comes out, you do not miss it. And if you don't know me, my name is Terri Cole, and I'm the author of Boundary Boss. You can get that book at boundarybossbook.com and anywhere that fine books are sold. And I want to say thank you so much for all your participation. If you're new, please introduce yourself. We are all a very friendly group, and I love to highlight your comments. So in this episode, I'm highlighting a comment from Robin. Thank you, Terri Cole, for yet again your videos and work. I always learn so much. I've set limits, distanced myself from energy vampires, those people who constantly complain, emotionally dump. Now I batch respond to texts and stop that feeling like I have to respond right away. I mean, why should we have to do that? I'm not on call for everyone. Correct, Robin? And I actually can't believe this one. Did not answer a personal question from a coworker. Initially thrown off by the question, I bought time by saying, "Wow, what a personal question." Then used one of your lines, "Why do you ask?" Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. The focus now went to my coworker and I never answered the intrusive question. Terri Cole, you're amazing. I've learned all this from you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, Robin, thank you for being a part of my crew. All right, moving into today's content. Curbing codependent anticipation. That is what we're talking about. So part of how this came up for me years ago, I was planning a family trip, and one person in my family that was married into the family at the time was a very difficult personality. And I was thinking of all the things how can I avoid there being a conflict on this family vacation with this person who can ruin it for everyone and has at different points. And then I started realizing, this is super unhealthy and total bullshit. I'm just codependently organizing myself around this person who, it wasn't like they always acted that way, but they're the people who are offended. They feel like, oh, wait, we're all sharing a home together, the house together for this little vacation. But why didn't I get the good room? Or I was somehow left out. Right? It's always that feeling where you're like, oh my God. And then everyone being like, well, we don't want that person to torture the person they're married to, who happens to be the person we're related to, a whole thing. But that was the impetus for me to realize that doing all of that is not my job. And that my job is to let the chips fall where they may. And yet you can have one difficult person in a dynamic just activate the shit out of every other person's codependent nature. At least that's what was happening within my family. So I just decided, got in touch with the person, was like, hey, this is what it is. This is, explained the situation. And either you want to come or you don't. But I said it I was like, hey, just so you know, there's also, if these accommodations don't work for you, there's also, here's 3 hotels in the area. If you would prefer to do that, that's fine. I'm not worrying about it. You decided. You're a grown-up, Anyway, moving into what is codependent anticipation. This is worrying in advance, right? Consciously knowing that an event or a situation is coming up, like the holidays, let's say, or a birthday thing or whatever is coming up, and over planning the shit out of it like I was doing to avoid anything that you think will be uncomfortable. To try to avoid anything, right? Fear and dread, because you're anticipating what someone else might react to, right? So as you're planning the event, but you're over planning it because it's taking up so much bandwidth. and knowing everything. This is a very codependent trait also. It's like we know everyone's preferences in our life. I'm not sure I can say that they all know yours, but we know theirs. So we want to make sure that there's the vegetarian option for the people who are that. We want to make sure that this person doesn't do dairy, so they get this. Now, some of those things we need to do, right? Meaning, if you have people at your house and they don't eat meat, you need a vegetarian option. But there's one thing to plan. There's another thing to worry about it, to worry that other people are going to be offended. It's so much trying to control the outcome, and it impacts your day-to-day life so much. It just keeps you in this loop, this stressful loop of anxious thoughts, right? Thinking of what all the people need in advance. So if this is ringing a bell for you, I'm going to be giving you some ideas of things that you can do in this episode to do that less, to stick to your own side of the street a little bit more. That'd be great. And to have the courage to let the chips fall where they may. This concept is similar but different to another concept that I created called auto-accommodating, right? So auto-accommodating is being in a state of hyper-awareness, a hyper-vigilant sort of, that's being acutely dialed in to what's happening around you. And it's like to see if you can help avoid conflict, right? So you could be out in public, you could be on a plane and be like, oh, I'll switch seats with you, even though no one even asked you, but you're trying to, you know what I mean? Even stuff that doesn't directly relate to you. So that's auto-accommodating. A lot of times, if you're an empath, if you're a highly sensitive person, chances are your antennas are very high, and we're always scanning the room and scanning the people and being incredibly aware of what's going on. How this is different. So codependent anticipation is something that's happening in the future as opposed to something that's happening now. And it takes up a lot of bandwidth in your brain. And this sort of goes along with emotional labor, right? The invisible, unpaid work that many of us do all the time to keep the boat floating, right? Keep the boat of the ship of our lives going. And it's a lot of times it's stuff that people don't know. It's not like the toilet paper replaces itself, or the end of the year gifts get bought for the teachers by themselves, or all of the millions of things that women in particular have done forever to keep the world going. But this is similar to that because emotional labor, it's a form of emotional labor that's even more dysfunctional than emotional labor, because a lot of times we're spinning our wheels. With moving forward with the codependent anticipation, it's like it can sort of never end. With emotional labor, it never ends either, but at least we're doing things. Where I feel like with codependent anticipation, there's a lot of wasted time and energy. Again, thinking about something that we are trying to control that we can't, because so much of the time this involves other people and their own behavior. So what other things come into this codependent anticipation? So we have emotional labor, we have conflict avoidance, which that's not everybody, but if you are suffering from this, most likely conflict avoidance is something that you are really committed to. That you don't like confrontation, you don't like there being problems, you don't like rocking the boat yourself, but you also don't like when other people rock the boat, because that really fuels this codependent anticipation. Again, thinking of all the things to avoid what we want to avoid. And the third thing that layers into this is overfunctioning and overdoing. And again, all of these things can be offshoots or under the umbrella of codependency, obviously. But the overfunctioning, the overgiving, the overdoing, the overcommitting, again, you can find yourself, let's say you think that someone's going to resent being asked to do something. A lot of times we'll take it on ourselves to do it because right there, we're trying to avoid conflict. We're like, it's fine, I'll do it, no problem. Again, but think about why. If you're overcommitting, if you're overfunctioning, if you're overgiving, what is in it for you? What is the secondary gain which really is an important question. And I've created a downloadable guide for you. You can just get it at terricole.com/guide. And in that, I will add the secondary gain information, which basically is, what do we get to not feel, not face, and not experience by continuing this codependent anticipation behavior, by continuing to overfunction, overgive? And when you think about it, we get to not feel out of control in the moment, right? Because if we let the chips fall where they may, maybe there's going to be a big blow up. Who knows, right? So that's part of secondary gain, is understanding the unobvious gain of staying stuck in a situation or continuing behavior that we say we don't like, but we keep doing it. So that will be in your guide. So let's walk through things that you can do. Start with taking an anxiety inventory. Like, think about it. Who are the people in your life who kick up this codependent anticipation? Are there people who are close to you? Are there people that you don't see that often? So I'll give you a couple of questions that you can answer in that downloadable guide, because it's really important that we know who we're dealing with, right? Who are we dealing with in this circumstance? The second thing to think about is really prioritizing your own feelings, your own desires. That means you have to know them. What do you want to spend your time doing? Because I'm positive it's not worrying about someone in your family that you don't even like, right? But we still do that. It's like we are sacrificing our own lives to, quote unquote, keep the peace. But it's not peaceful to do this. So really think about how much of what you're doing around the holidays and all year long are you doing out of obligation? Are you doing because other people expect you to do it? What do you want to do? So you've got to know and prioritize your own feelings. And then you've got to be discerning, right? You've got to be discerning about who do you spend your time with. If you find that there are some people who really kick up this codependent anticipation for you, be honest with yourself. Do you have to spend time with them? Like, is that mandatory? And if so, even if it's in a family situation, can you spend time with other cousins that you like better than that particular one? Can you protect yourself? Can you do some energy work? Can you zip up? There's so many things that you can do, but be discerning about who you make yourself vulnerable to, because not everyone deserves for you to be vulnerable to them. There are ways that you can still interact with these people, but protect yourself more. So be discerning and more protective. And the last thing I want to say about this is you've got to have some kind of a mindfulness practice, right? You've got to be creating internal space. And mindfulness practice is the way to do it. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but that's the only way that I know how to do it. So a guided meditation, breathing exercises, journaling in the morning, really tending to your internal sacred space, because that creates reaction time in real life. So it is so much easier to not auto-accommodate if you have space inside, to not do the codependent anticipation. And if you do, the more internal space you have, the easier it is to catch yourself, to be mindful in the moment, to be like, oh my God, look at how much bandwidth I'm giving to this thing that's supposed to be fun. So much of this codependent anticipation literally takes the joy out of the things that are supposed to be fun. And part of it is overfunctioning makes everything not fun. Overdoing, feeling burdened, having people anticipate that you're going to do all the work and you doing all the work. That is not joyful, because it puts you in this one down position. It's exhausting. And it really makes you question, like, is this my value? Doing all the crap, doing all the stuff, doing all the cooking. And listen, maybe it's very dialed into your identity. I don't know, but I think that more sharing, more delegating, cooking together, spending quality time in a way where you're not seething with resentment makes all of life's gatherings way more meaningful and less stressful. So give yourself permission to change the way that you do things. But I think you've got to start with, at least with this concept that we're covering today, is really start with understanding this codependent anticipation. How much of your life is spent doing that to avoid conflict? And I really want to hear from you. So let me know, did this, was there anything in this that really spoke to you? Do you feel like this is you and you have that experience? Again, you can get the guide at terricole.com/guide. And I want to hear what you have to say about this. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.